Chronicle of Detroit
won't work.
What was your impetus for this project? Where did it start?
In November of last year, I approached Mark about the idea of doing a documentary on ML as a part of the celebration of the anniversary of the original series. And the minute I suggested this to Shawn, he was in.
The president said, I love it.
You asked it around, you tried to bring it around my face. It's gone.
What are you doing? What are you doing? Come on.
That is not paid for by them. That is paid for by the people of Detroit.
You might be qualified, ML.
I'm not qualified for this job.
Let me tell you something. You want to go right now? Okay? You want to go right now,
Kids, it's your old pal ML Elric, stuck in a time warp because we are here in 2022 and we are going to be talking about Kwame Kilpatrick, which is so 2002, so 2008, so
can't get away from him.
2015, so 2021. But you know what? The man is in the news, and for whatever reason, I have been chosen to be the person who tries to keep the record straight, who tries to keep the truth flame lit.
Well, you're chosen because you sat through that whole trial, and there's so many people. I'll never forget when Daniel Ferguson was here, and he got parts of the trial wrong because you actually sat for the whole trial.
He spoke authoritatively about things that he had never seen or heard before, so that's not uncommon with the Kilpatrick coterie, but in the same way that God may have chosen Kilpatrick for all kinds of things, apparently he's chosen me to try and keep the record straight. And so we will do that as we're joined by Alan Lengel, the editor of Deadline Detroit, deadlinedetroit.com, a great news site in Detroit. We encourage you to subscribe and become a member, who has written a column urging Kilpatrick to be freed. He was freed. And he spoke with him, I think, before any other reporter last week, and you can see that full interview at deadlinedetroit.com. So we're going to be talking to Alan a little bit about his Kilpatrick, because I think his Kilpatrick is a little different from my Kilpatrick. And certainly the mayor likes Alan better than he likes me, which a lot of people feel that way too. So I don't know if that's necessarily a Kilpatrick thing.
Well, I'm one of them.
Yeah. What?
I mean, huh?
Oh, damn. Are you channeling Shawn?
Yeah, exactly.
Shawn is not here, by the way, because he is still recovering from a nasty bout of COVID. So he has a different excuse for being lethargic today, and we hope that he will be back with us next week. We wish him Godspeed in his recovery. And a couple other things we're going to touch on before we go. Had a very chance and bizarre encounter in East Lansing last week that we're going to talk about. Another one of my greatest hits routines. And a few words about the Clark Park Classic, our outdoor charity hockey game that I started in Southwest Detroit in 2015 with Mike Rattay. The game is this Saturday. That's January 22nd. So we're going to talk a little bit about the game and see if maybe you want to come out and have a beer with me on Saturday. But first, Mark, we should probably thank the people who make this show possible.
Well, yeah, let's start with Hall Financial, because everybody needs to get some money out of their house, and we know rates are going to go up this year, right? Everybody knows that. That's not a secret anymore.
Maybe 3 times.
Yeah, that's it's the rumor. That's what the feds are saying. So right now is the chance to lock in a good rate, because you don't know when they're going to go up. You need to call Hall Financial right now. You can get started with a free 5-minute mortgage review. So that's all it takes. 5 minutes. They're going to look at your financial situation and help you lower your monthly mortgage payment. Their number one priority at Hall Financial is client service. They have over 4,000 5-star reviews. So why would you go anywhere else? After all, you went there, ML. Multiple times.
Yes, that's right.
You can't stop getting mortgages.
I would love to do another deal with them. I just really need to have a job before my numbers come back.
Yeah, when you get that job, they can get it all checked out, and they can close your loan in 8 business days or less. The fastest in the industry. So how do you get a hold of them? It's 866-CALL-HALL. That's 866-CALL-HALL, or chat with them online at callhallfirst.com.
And when you call them, make sure you let them know that ML Solar Detroit sent you.
Yeah.
And I was looking at my IRA, and something happened to it that I wasn't really pleased with. But I know there's a guy out there who would say, just don't worry about it.
That guy is Luke Nowacki at Pinnacle Wealth, but what jumped out?
There was a big drop, and I know the market had some ups and downs at the end of the year, but I had a precipitous drop, and I'm trying to figure out what it is. But when you have Luke Nowacki working with you, he makes it all about, oh, wait, that's too early for that. No, he's the guy who can explain those things.
Yes.
Who can get you in the right deal, and who can also make sure that, as I'm trying to do, you stay cool, stick with the plan.
Yeah, he'll provide you.
How do you come up with a plan? That's where Luke comes in.
Call him 248-663-4748 for rational financial advice. If you're like ML and you open it up and go, oh, what happened? What do I do? Get advice, get a strategy. Call Luke, Pinnacle Wealth, 248-663-4748.
Because he will talk you off the ledge and make it all about you, sweetheart.
Securities and investment advisory services offered through Royal Alliance Associates Inc., member FINRA SIPC. Royal Alliance Associates Inc. is separately owned, and other entities and/or marketing names, products, or services referenced here are independent of Royal Alliance Associates Inc.
So thanks, Dave. Thanks, Luke. When you call them, please let them know that you found out about them through the show, because without them, we're not here. And without us, you probably have something better to do. So, well, yeah, call them anyway. So on Twitter, I'm at Elric, and on Facebook, I'm ML Elric. I posted something about today's show that said, Kwame Kilpatrick's least favorite Detroit reporter speaks with Kwame Kilpatrick's favorite Detroit reporter. Now, that's somewhat tongue-in-cheek, but Alan, I think you and the mayor have developed quite a rapport over the years. How do you feel about that?
Well, you know what? I didn't know him in the time that you knew him, really. So I've sort of known him in more post prison. It's interesting. I wrote a column in 2018. The column doesn't say Kwame Kilpatrick's innocent. Kwame, it said, hey, he was guilty. He needed to serve time. Having covered federal court for decades, I had never seen a 28-year sentence for something like that. I thought it was excessive. And I wrote about that. I said, it's really not so much about Kwame Kilpatrick. It's about the integrity of the justice system. And I thought there was not justice in that sentencing. And he did say that people started using that column. It went to the White House, and it did precipitate a conversation. It is what it is. It's not. I'm not trying to suck up to him. I mean, we have developed a little bit of a rapport. It's not. We're not hanging out. We're not having beers or whatever. But I know the conversation is he changed? I'd like to think so. I didn't know him before. I knew of him, certainly. But.
Well, and you had a chance. I think mostly you've spoken to him over the phone. Was this the first time when you sat down with him last week on the Avenue of Fashion? Was that the first time you've been face-to-face in the same room with the great man?
Well, besides the trial where, maybe he'd be walking down the hallway, maybe
sure.
I'd nod my head or something like that. But that was the first time we actually met face to face and sat down. So it was interesting. I don't know, the interview, he seemed humble, but I don't know, people afterwards saw it and said, oh, that's an act. That's not who he is. He's going to be the same old Kwame. I don't, like I said, I try to give people the benefit of the doubt, and probably, sometimes too much so, but I hope he does well. I mean, what's the benefit? I mean, of him not doing well for anyone except, a lot of people saying, I told you so.
I feel like he's fairly predictable. When you hear him ask a question, you kind of know what he's going to say. Did he answer anything that surprised you when you talked to him, Alan?
You know what? I have to say I was a little disappointed because I thought we were getting exclusive, but I didn't know that. But he didn't say that. But when I got to the clothing store, Josh Landon from Fox 2 was doing a very lengthy interview, and we were supposed to start our interview at 12:15. It was about 12:35, and then Kwame said, "Oh my gosh, I got to get to a dentist appointment. Can we do this in 5 or 10 minutes?" And I was like, so I did not get to answer or ask all the questions. I thought he was, for what the question, I wanted to get deeper into it and ask some, more probing questions. But I mean, he answered what he didn't really dodge. He didn't dodge any questions that I asked him.
I like that one question you had where you said, "Where's the money, bitch?" That's usually the last question people ask.
I did have people ask, in my first interview I had on the phone, he said he did have an intention of repaying what he owes, in restitution and stuff. So, and I think, look, this path is certainly going to, I think, open opportunities for him financially. And I think everybody hopes that he does it the right way.
Well, his dad always said he should come out as a preacher, and certainly we covered all his bills while he was in the State House, when he was in the Manoogian Mansion, and then when he was in the big house. So it'd be nice if he could start, paying his own expenses. But I think it's interesting when you watch the interview. I'm going to post it on our website, which is mlsolvedetroit.com. But when I do an interview like that, particularly with a big newsmaker, particularly with someone who has a little bit of a history, maybe more infamous than famous, it's kind of tough because I think you feel like you want to develop a rapport. You want to ask some, I don't want to say necessarily softer questions, but you kind of want to just prime the pump and get the flow going. Because if you come in right away and you say something like, hey, so, prison sucks, huh? It kind of puts a damper on the interview. And in watching your interview, you ask some good questions, some questions I think people will be interested to hear the answer to. But it does seem like just as you're starting to get into some of the, here we're going to go rock'em sock'em robots, it's like, okay, I got to go to the dentist.
Yeah. I was hoping for more time. And like I said, I would have liked to have asked, some more probing questions. And you're right. You sit down with somebody right away. Even if you're meeting somebody for a business lunch or something like that, normally you don't sit down immediately and say, okay, so here's what we have, here's the numbers, here's blah, blah, blah. You sit down, hey, how's it going? What's going on? How was your, oh my God, it was a terrible drive over here, or, oh, I've had a rough morning, or it's been a great morning, or whatever. There's some niceties that are exchanged, and you sort of ease into stuff. And I think that's anything. We're dealing people with people, and so, and we've been in the business for so long. We interview people. We know how it's done, and we don't. There's some niceties that are created before you get into it. And like I said, he answered all the questions I asked. He had a dentist appointment at 1:00. I know he was late for it. And I did get about almost 20 minutes instead of 5 or 10, I was like, oh my God, what can we do? And even during that time, I'm trying to touch all four corners of what I want to get to. So,
but you thought you were going to have an exclusive, and then you find out that Josh Langdon is there. How did this come about? It's almost like he's doing a media tour to launch this online ministry to make more money. Right.
To make it clear, he did not tell me that it was an exclusive. We had, I reached out to him, and he said, I'm going to be in, this was maybe in November. He said, I'm going to be in January 8th or whatever. Why don't we get together?
But the timing is perfect, because he announces that, he's got a child on the way, and he's getting his name. I thought Fox 2, I thought their interview was just embarrassing for Fox 2. It was like a reclamation project. No hard-hitting questions. It was, I don't know. I thought that one was ridiculous. So it's clear what he's trying, for me, it's clear what he's trying to do here.
Well, I saw, I was standing right there when the interview was going on. So I probably listened to about, 20 minutes to a half hour of it. I thought it was interesting. And I haven't watched the Fox 2 thing, partly because I watched a lot of it. I thought one of the interesting things during that Fox 2, and I don't know if it made the cut, when he was talking about Donald Trump. Kwame was talking about Donald Trump, and he said, look, he did one of the greatest things. He gave a man freedom and stuff, and I'm not going to make all these judgments, and I'm not going to get into all his politics, he says, because when I was doing politics and I was helping out with the state Democrats, he says, I'd be doing commercials up in Alpena that were basically, I was, helping them make commercials that were anti-Detroit. It was like, what's that sucking sound in the state of Michigan? It's Detroit sucking up all the stuff. He goes, I was involved in that. So he says, I can't be hypocritical and criticize some of the stuff that Trump. I thought that was that was one of the more interesting, insights, I thought, into what was going on. But
it certainly does show the transactional side of Kilpatrick, because at the same time he was doing campaigning for people up north. This is when he was a state rep, and he was hoping to become the Speaker of the House. But as it happened, the Democrats did not win the majority, so he became the Democratic leader. But yeah, he was going to dog sledding up north and, campaigning for other lawmakers, trying to earn that those chits that he could cash in when he had the vote for leader. But at the same time, when he ran for mayor, he said Michigan was the Mississippi of the North. So he right away flipped the outstate people he was shilling for into hayseeds if it suited him. And in the same way that he was very obsequious with Trump, we're the same way. We've been wrongly accused. We've been persecuted by the evil media. I can relate to you. He's willing to be what he has to be to get what he wants. And that certainly seems to be very consistent. And there's a question that you asked him that I thought was particularly insightful. And Mark, if we can play cut one, or Joe.
Yep, Joe's got it. Joe's got it. Here.
And how about people who say, Kwame, I don't trust it. He's going to be back to the same, whatever. It's the same Kwame. I don't believe that he's changed.
Those are the people that I like the most.
Yeah. So I guess he likes me now, but he kind of took that on and went on to say that they're going to watch me and they're going to see that I'm different. But to those of us who have seen him in both Alan's interview and in the one he did with Josh Landon, the one thing that I saw that seemed to me to suggest there hasn't been a huge change, and it's unfair to say that the man hasn't changed. He's been in prison for quite a while, and that has to have an impact on you. But what hasn't changed is that it's all about him. Mm-hmm. And there were some comparisons he made in the Josh Landon interview that had me thinking, here we go. Kwame Kilpatrick still thinks he's Jesus. Joe, can you play cut 2 for us?
I don't believe that there's a new Kwame Kilpatrick. I just believe that there's a completely new creation altogether. I don't believe that you can have resurrection without crucifixion.
Wow.
So now he's been crucified. And I don't know if that makes me Pontius Pilate or if the feds are somehow, the Roman centurions who dragged him up and put him on the cross. But I think we all hope that he's a changed man. I think we all hope that he's going to straighten out and fly right.
I don't believe it.
But to say that he was crucified, I seem to remember Jesus didn't do anything wrong, whereas Mr. Kilpatrick was convicted of almost 24 counts of public corruption and frankly bears the bulk of the responsibility for this city being bankrupt. And while his sentence was commuted by President Trump, there are Detroit retirees and Detroit current employees who are going to suffer until the end of their days because of the haircut they had to take in their pensions, because of the city's bankruptcy, and because of any number of things that happened, because this man always put himself first. He thought he could walk on water and not when it was frozen and he was wearing skates.
Yeah. Let me say I know the payout on his lawsuit and all that was kind of atrocious, but I think it's unfair. I think the city of Detroit had been having financial problems for a long, long time. I think Kwame Kilpatrick, and you can correct me if I'm wrong. You covered everything much closer than I did, but my sense was Kwame Kilpatrick was just kind of carrying on the tradition of the management of the city of Detroit is just borrow more money until it was, I'm not sure he was doing anything so differently than some of the previous administrations, and I could be wrong. And if you correct me on that,
where's our Trump drop?
Unfair to throw out. No, I think it's a little unfair to just blame him and say, the city was bankrupt. It wasn't suddenly. We're talking about an impoverished city that had been on the decline for so long. I don't know that suddenly it's like Kwame Kilpatrick steps in there and takes the burden of all the history of Detroit. That's
Well, so here's some key points on that, and I'm glad we're talking about this because this is something that people forget or don't know. When Mayor Archer became mayor in the early 90s, the city was facing a financial catastrophe. And one of the reasons why I'm involved in this fundraiser for Clark Park is because the Mayor Archer closed Clark Park as a city recreation center because the city couldn't afford it. He adjusted the city's budget to its revenues, and the neighborhood came together to keep Clark Park open, which is a wonderful story about Detroiters coming together to help Detroiters. But Mayor Young laid off hundreds, maybe thousands of police officers when he had to during the 70s to balance the budget. Mayor Archer made deep cuts when he came in to try and get the city back on its on firm financial footing. And as Mayor Archer was leaving office, he instituted, and he was in office by the end in sort of a financial, it was a very good time, but he recognized that the city was headed for trouble in the early 2000s, and he had a contract on the table for city unions that offered a couple % raises and some other stuff. He took those contracts off the table because he realized the city couldn't afford the raises. He instituted 10% across the board budget cuts before he left office. And he told Kilpatrick as he was leaving that, hey, there's some tough times coming. You need to be ready for that. And when he left, there was a surplus and there was money in the rainy day fund. Kilpatrick immediately came in, spent down the surplus, depleted the rainy day fund. And then when Kilpatrick became mayor, one of the better things he did was negotiate deals for permanent casinos in Detroit. Well, you know how it is here, temporary, permanent, temporary, all this foolishness. But there was a lot of money that came in. There's like a $150 million payment that came in, spent that. And the casino tax, that was a brand new source of revenue, or at least a source of revenue that had become very robust very early in Kilpatrick's tenure. So he had new money to help balance the budget, and he didn't. He did not adjust the city's spending. He did have some cutbacks in state aid, which a lot of cities had to deal with, none of whom went bankrupt. And then one of the other things with Kilpatrick, and I asked him this when he came back in 2012 or 13, I think it was 2012 because I was just starting at Fox 2. He was at an event talking to the National Association of Black Journalists Detroit chapter, and I asked him, I said, what responsibility do you bear for the city's bankruptcy? And he said, I bear some of it because I didn't think the city was ready to take the kind of cuts that needed to be made. In other words, he wasn't willing to be the leader who said, guess what, folks, this is going to hurt, but we have to do this or we're going to lose control of our city. Right. So he kind of fiddled while Rome burned. And certainly we do have some structural problems, and I don't want to go into some sort of civics finance lesson here, but Kwame Kilpatrick did what he thought he needed to do for Kwame Kilpatrick, even if the ultimate price would be paid for the residents and Detroit workers. And people, he wants to skate on this was just an affair. He wants to skate on I got an outlandish sentence. He got the same sentence as a white guy in Cleveland who did less than he did, but we can leave that for another time. But this city's bankruptcy very much has Kwame Kilpatrick's fingerprints on it.
Yeah. I'll say the white guy in Cleveland, I would say the same argument for that guy as well. 28 years was excessive. I think, what's the point? You give somebody 15 years, you give them 28 years. What it is that they can't pay any restitution. Now, look, Kwame's going to be able to pay some, hopefully we'll see some restitution there. The guy.
Or he could claim he only has $6 again like he did last time.
Yeah. But I think, it's just, what's the point? Did Kwame, if Kwame had gotten 15 years, would it have been that, he would have, not seen his children grow up, which he didn't even during the 8 years that he served. His marriage dissolved, which it may have dissolved anyways.
That banging other chicks might have been a factor in that more than the going to prison.
Right.
Well, all those things are because of things he did. He did the crime. I was amazed too, and I can't remember. I must have been a Fox 2 interview. He doesn't seem to really know why Donald Trump is it commuted his sentence or what? I don't know.
I think it's a commutation. It's not a pardon.
It's a commutation, right? It's not a pardon, but
do you believe he doesn't know why he was so lucky?
No, I think he explained it that he said somebody came to the White House with Jared Kushner and stuff like that. Jared Kushner was helping him out. And I said, why would Jared Kushner help you out? And he says, well, because his father, Jared Kushner's father was a sleazebag who tried to blackmail his brother-in-law. And he got a couple of years, and he got off after he was released because of, I think, some drug issues or whatever. There was something going on. But I think he has an idea. I think he just decided people went to Trump. They went, with the argument. They went with the column, with the other argument, saying, look, this is really, he said, the column popped up and they said, here is evidence that it's not just Kwame Kilpatrick and his friends who think he got too much time, that he got, there was an injustice there. And I think they saw that as an opening, but there was a lot of discussions going on. There was a lot of discussions going on. And I think Trump just said, all right, let's do it.
And I also
I think he may not have understood everything that Trump was thinking, but I don't know that anyone could ever understand everything that Trump is thinking.
No, and maybe not even Trump himself. But we talked about his appeal for leniency on this show, a couple years ago. And I always thought that it would be a genius political move by Trump to let Kilpatrick out in time to be involved in the 2020 presidential campaign. The fact that Trump waited until the final hours of his presidency is really the only thing about the release that surprised me. I thought if he wouldn't let him out in time to help him, he wouldn't let him out at all. But I think there were some influential people with a lot of money who appealed to Trump, as well as people who had worked with Kim Kardashian. But, briefly, and I think, arguing whether or not Kilpatrick got enough time or not is sort of whistling past the graveyard, because he got the sentence he got and he's free now. And we, frankly, on a personal level, I'm glad for his sons that he is free, because to be without your father when you love your father is a terrible thing. Now, he probably should have thought about that when he was stealing and cheating and whatever, but we're past that now. But just as a last note, and I'll give you the last word on this, that 28-year sentence, those sentences are determined by guidelines. It's determined by whether you're a public official. That enhances the sentence. How much money you got as a part of your corrupt schemes, how many counts you were convicted of, and the kind of counts you were convicted of. And in fact, the guidelines called for him getting more time. The judge kind of gave him somewhere in the mid-range of what prosecutors were looking for. So, I mean, there was a formula. Federal sentences are decided based on a grid where you put things in and it spits out a number. Nobody made up that Kwame Kilpatrick should get 28 years. And frankly, the fact that he was a public official, that's one of the reasons he got so much time, because the system is set up to say if you take an oath to serve the people and instead you cheat them, you're going to be real sorry. So don't do it.
Well, that's one way of looking at it. I think it's a little bit too black and white. There's a reason that the guidelines were no longer mandatory. I covered a lot of cases when those guidelines were mandatory, and judges would go like, this is not fair. I really don't agree with this, but my hands are tied. We have to do this because we have these mandatory sentencing guidelines. Now they're just guidelines. And I think sometimes they work and sometimes they're totally out of whack. And so I think just plug in numbers and this and that. I mean, you can do that, but I don't think it really is. It's look, if he had gotten 15 years, wouldn't I mean, if you don't think of that as a deterrent, if you don't think of that as punitive, I mean, like I say, I think the guidelines are just what they are. They're just guidelines. They don't always fit. It's not everything fits all, and they're not always appropriate. And I think in this case, it was not appropriate. Certainly the government argued based on the guidelines, and so they weren't out of bounds in that. But to be honest, I think the judge may have had some second thoughts about those sentences, because they just don't really, they don't make sense. And plus we end up paying hundreds of thousands of dollars to put away somebody like Kwame Kilpatrick for all these excessive years for what? I mean, what's the benefit? I think he got the message. He did something wrong. I mean, like I say, if he had gotten 15 years, if he'd gotten 12 years even, I think he would have gotten the message that it was punitive and there was something wrong.
It'd be nice if he admitted that he got something wrong, because I just feel like that, I don't know, maybe it needs to be clear. But I wanted to ask you, does he still drive a tremendous amount of traffic to DeadlineDetroit.com? I mean, does he still a guy that gets a lot of eyeballs?
I would, tremendous is I would not say tremendous. I'd say very, we definitely got some good traffic off of that. It wasn't like we've done a lot better with some other ones, and some other ones that you wouldn't we've aggregated something and taken us 15 minutes to write, where we've done a lot better. I mean, it did decent, but there's no question. There was a debate on 9:10 a.m. I helped co-host a show on Saturdays with Adolph Mongo, and there was a debate whether we should. Who cares about Kwame Kilpatrick anymore? And one of the co-hosts, Vanessa Moss, who's an attorney, she was like, "I don't care about Kwame anymore. I don't need to hear about him, and I didn't." I'm not going to give Deadline, the traffic, and she's a supporter of Deadline. She donates, contributes to us. So it's not personal to Deadline, but she feels like there's resentment, and it's not a black and white thing. There are a lot of black people who are, we see that on Facebook, on social media, where there are, some of our black readers are still angry at Kwame and are not sympathetic at all. So, but the question is there interest? And I have an interest in the history, and I appreciate Mike, his budgetary, little insights there, because I'd forgotten a lot, and I haven't followed things so closely. But I feel like the mayors are sort of markers or milestones in the history of Detroit. I interviewed Coleman Young for 4 hours back in 1984 or 85, beginning of 85, on his battle with the FBI for 40 years. I find, the mayors are a significant part of our history here. And so Kwame's part of our history, good or bad. It's,
Sure. And to those people saying, why are we talking about this now? He came back here. Mm-hmm. If he stayed down in Texas, if he decided to just hang out in Atlanta, we wouldn't be talking about it. And I'm not saying that his Detroit privileges are revoked. That is not something for me to decide. Most of his family, when there was nothing left for him in Detroit, they beat feet for someplace else, which I think says something to you about their commitment to the city that they helped put in the position that it was in when they left. But be that as it may, you're still free to move about the country. But when he comes home, I don't think we'd really know about it. Maybe some word of mouth, except he makes himself available for these interviews because he wants the attention, because it serves his purposes, and because, he still wants something from us.
Right.
Money.
Look, he's launching, on the 20th, tomorrow. He's going to launch, it's called, I think, Movemental Ministries. And it's going to be a virtual ministry. Now, who knows who Kwame Kilpatrick is outside of Detroit? I mean, people have heard of him and stuff, but who has the greatest interest but Detroiters? So who's going to be probably, at least the starting foundation of his ministry is probably going to be a lot of Detroiters. That's my, there could be some folks in Atlanta if he gives himself a profile in Atlanta, but for the most part, Detroit is really, he's doing it from Georgia, but I think Detroit is going to be an integral part of his ministry.
Sure, and I told Alan I was going to give him the last word on whether the 28 years was fair, and I think I kind of have, but I want to give maybe Kilpatrick the last word on what happened to him, and this is one of the things that he talked to Josh Landon about on Fox 2.
Do you feel you were treated unfairly in the public eye?
I just can't talk about it being unfair. I think it was necessary. I was so angry at Channel 2 and 4 and 7 and Free Press and the reporters, and I'm just not anymore because it was pretty good that I was afflicted. And I don't know where I'd be if I would have just been able to keep going like I was going. And so I needed all of that to sustain the strength, the confidence, and the courage that I have now in proclaiming the Word of God. I don't believe that I would have the tenacity that I have for it, but for all that I went through. And so, no, I know a lot of people think it was unfair, and this was, you know, they pronounced a 28-year sentence on me, and people say, that was ridiculous. Well, I didn't do it. So, did I deserve it? I don't know.
So he didn't do it.
Jeez.
This all had to happen for him. He's not sure where he would have been if we hadn't gone through what we went through. Well, on behalf of the marriages that were ruined, on behalf of the police officers whose careers he tried to ruin, on behalf of the city workers who suffered, on behalf of the neighborhoods that suffered, on behalf of everything that the city went through because of his corrupt, incompetent administration, you know, I'm glad we could help. You're welcome.
I would say, you know, during the first interview I had with him, I had a lot of time to maneuver and kind of ask questions. And I did ask him about the crimes. And he basically he said, I don't really want to go back there and relive everything and do stuff. So he kind of, that he avoided. I mean, that was, of the whole interview, I thought it was a really good interview. I was happy with it. That was the one part where I was a little bit disappointed that I would have liked for him to just put it out there and said, look, this is what happened. And he felt, and you know, I'm not getting right or wrong, he felt like we shouldn't go back and start mulling over. And I understand that he didn't want the interview, the headline, to be Kilpatrick finally admits he's a crook. He wanted something more moving forward and stuff like that. And so I totally get where he was coming from on that. So,
well, in the same way that you can't have a resurrection without a crucifixion, I don't think you can have redemption without remorse and without admitting that you did something wrong. So I'm not here to beat up on Kwame Kilpatrick. I mean, we used to be pretty friendly. He tried many times to hire me early in his administration. And if I had a chance to sit down with him and have a conversation, I'd love to do that because there are some redeeming characteristics about the man. But to pretend
he's a charming guy. I like the guy, but you know.
Oh, believe me.
That's why he'll be a great preacher.
Yeah, he walks into a room. I walk into a room. Everybody's like, tell that funny-looking white dude to get the hell out of here. I'm talking to Quam. But I think I want him to go forward and to do well. But I think for him to pretend that what he did to this city, the trauma that he created in this, you know, the extortion, the businesses that were ruined, the lives that were ruined, you can't pretend that didn't happen because it did. And I saw it and it broke my heart. And it bothers me, I guess, on a personal level, that doesn't seem to bother him. It's all about, now it's time for me to do well again. I hope you do well, but you can't drive away from the fatal car crash and say, shit happens. Or actually, in this case, say, I don't know if shit happens. People told me shit happened.
I'm just driving.
Yeah. I was just driving fast, drunk, you know, on the wrong way on the highway, and shit happened. You know, don't blame me.
And I think he's going to bother a lot of people. And Ralph even commented on the Facebook page about he's preaching to us now what is right and what is wrong. He said it was a total joke, and it does feel that way when there's like no remorse. That how do you if you don't accept what you did wrong, how do you tell us what's right and wrong?
Yeah, he's an amazing, talented man who could reach a lot of people. And when he was a teacher, he reached a lot of kids, and he really could have been someone, I don't want to say he could have been Christ-like for the city of Detroit, but he really could have been one of the heroes of this city. He could have been one of the greatest mayors of our lifetime and maybe of any time, but the flaws he still refuses to admit are the reason why he's not, which isn't to attack Alan. Alan did a great job. Alan has done a really good job presenting what Mr. Kilpatrick has to say, challenging him on things, and we really appreciate you getting the mayor to sit down and say a few words before he got flossed. Now, you might say that Josh Landon got fleeced, but that was. And Josh is a nice guy. He's a good East Side guy.
Nice guy.
But I think his approach to that was, hey, I got an interview with a real famous guy. Let's talk about how he's feeling. And I'm more concerned about how regular people are feeling. And Alan talked a little bit about this. I know on the campaign trail, I'd run into people who say, you're the guy who got Kilpatrick. Good job. And then I'd run into people. In fact, it happened at the polls where people would say, don't vote for him. He's the one who got Kilpatrick. He's the one who put Kilpatrick away. Don't vote for him. You know, so
one person.
He's still polarizing.
There's strong feelings, about him one way or another. People are very, there's not a lot of neutrality about Kwame.
Well, it's probably because of what ML just said. There was a lot of potential there, and he wasted it because he chose himself.
He disappointed a lot of people, no question.
Yeah.
And there's only one person to blame, and that's Kwame Kilpatrick.
But I'd be curious. I'm curious what with the new ministry, what his footprint will be here in Detroit. And and this is totally speculative. At some point, I mean, if the base really just becomes Detroit or just grows and grows in Detroit, I would think it'd be a matter of time before there'd be a brick and mortar church here,
without a doubt,
in the city.
That's got to be the long-term goal for him.
Well, we'll see, but for better or for worse, I'll be here to keep the record straight. And Alan, thanks for making news. We're going to have DeadlineDetroit.com. You can check out the latest news that they're breaking there, and we'll also have a link to Alan's interview with the mayor just before he got his enamel scraped.
Sure.
We assume that's what he was cleaning. He didn't seem to be he didn't seem to have any swollen jaws or anything like that. So Alan, thanks very much, and keep up the great work.
Thanks a lot. Thanks for having me.
Thanks, Alan. Before we move on to Geek of the Week, you teased something that you ran into somebody up in East Lansing.
Yeah. So I'm kind of, last week was like a greatest shits tour for me. I was up in East Lansing taking my daughter out for dinner.
You were supposed to be
birthday.
isolating, weren't you?
I'd gone through my 5-day isolation. So following the CDC guidelines. So
whatever they may be at any given time.
Yeah. Well, my daughter was concerned about that, and said that she's teaching, and I said, look at the CDC guidelines, because whatever I heard last time, I can't remember, and it said if you have been by someone who tested positive, you can be out and about, just wear a mask and a good mask, a N95 mask if you can. So we were out at a sushi place in East Lansing. My daughters go to Michigan State, and we're having a good old time with a few friends. And a dude walks in wearing a hoodie with an older woman, has a seat on the other side of the restaurant. Nice. I don't really pay him any mind, except they're sitting across me, so they're in my line of sight, so I see him. Then the guy takes off the jacket, and I see he's got a sweatshirt that says NBA on the back. I'm like, okay, kind of a tall, skinny, balder guy. And then he turns, and I notice it's friggin' Gabe Leland.
Oh, really?
He's sitting there at the sushi bar.
Oh, boy.
So we finish our dinner, and I'm like, what am I going to say to this guy? My presence has never been anything that lifted his heart. And I'm a big believer that there's no reason for kicking anybody unless they're up or unless they're telling lies. So we wrap up, and his back is to me, so I don't even know if he's even seen me. At that point, I'm pretty sure it's his mom who he's with, and I only met her once at a tailgate, but the first Leland story I did was busting his dad, Burton, for claiming he lived in Detroit when he really lived in East Lansing. So it makes sense he's visiting mom in East Lansing. Maybe he's staying there. I don't know what's going on. So I'm like, okay, well, we're going to wrap up dinner. We're not going to intrude on them. So we're walking out of the restaurant, and I hear this woman's voice say, ML. And I'm like, well, and I look back, it's not the people we're with. And I hear it again. I'm like, I should go back and say hello. So I had a nice little chat with Gabe and his mother, and Gabe said, hey, you gave it a good fight, gave it a shot, all right. And I I told his mother.
Oh, in regards to
running for council.
Yeah, and you knew he would bring that up just to twist it into you.
Well, and the other thing is, one of the early things I did in the race was say I'm getting into this race because Gabe Leland needs to resign. So I don't know if he saw that or not, but
I'm sure he did.
But I did tell I expressed my condolences to his mother for the loss of her husband, and she thanked me for that, and we just had kind of a pleasant little conversation. I think his mom may have been more genuine than him. I'm not really sure. I don't know her well enough, but you're exactly right with Leland. When he says that kind of stuff, on some level, he's like, oh yeah, so it's probably better for you it didn't work out because you're probably happier. Meaning, yeah.
You should have just said, well, it's not illegal to run.
Well, exactly. At least I wasn't forced to. But the funny thing about it, he's such an odd dude.
Yeah, I remember you telling me before he's kind of awkward.
It's hard to know whether he's being legit, like we now have a shared experience and we both ran for city council and both got the shit kicked. Now, of course, he got elected every time he ran, but I don't know if the pleasantries were shared trauma. But one thing he said to me that I think maybe was genuine. He said, it's probably better for your family that
oh, what a jerk,
that you didn't win because what he said next is why I think there may have been something genuine there. It's like, because for the next 4 years, wherever you go, people they're going to be all over you. They're just not going to leave you alone. And
unless you do things by the book.
But he means as a council member, and this is why I ran for city council, is because you can help people. You're very connected to your people, and so when they see you, like, hey, what's going on with this? We need this done. And I thought that was kind of an on-point comment by him. But yeah, I mean, of course, the problem he had was that when he saw people, he wanted something from them, which became his undoing. But, his mother said, hey, you walked out without saying hi. And I said, well, I don't always bring joy to everybody who sees me. And so she's like, oh, yeah, okay. And Gabe was like, well, I always thought we had some interesting conversations. I enjoyed the interaction.
Oh, please. No, you didn't. He hid from you.
Yeah, I mean, well, sometimes we'd meet and sometimes we wouldn't. It just never ever really went well.
You should have said, what are you doing here? This isn't a titty bar.
Yeah. Well, as we reveal at the Free Press, he arranged some bribe payments at a strip club, but I guess very much like that strip club in Southwest Detroit, there were no strippers at this restaurant, so I guess it had that in common too.
Yeah, did you think of inviting him to the Clark Park hockey game?
We didn't. I thought we should probably wrap the conversation before there was an ask. I just
wanted to invite him somewhere.
Well, actually, I thought I should invite him on the show, and so maybe I will sometime.
I'd love to have him on
because he is an interesting dude, and he's seen a few things, and it would be very curious to catch up with him. But last week was Old Home Week. Kwame Kilpatrick, Gabe Leland, and
keep following you.
Else.
And Clark Park is this weekend?
Clark Park is this weekend. We will put a link on our website. It's patronicity.com. If you want to go there, look for Clark Park. A couple listeners have been kind enough to follow that website and make a donation to help the kids in Southwest Detroit. This hockey game, it's been so successful. We're hoping to raise $5,000 online. We're hoping that our entire fundraising effort, which includes the carnival, Winter Carnival is free to everybody, noon to 4. The hockey games are free to everybody. The women's game is at 6. The men's game that I play in is at 7:30. These may raise $40,000 this year, which would be great because last year we created an endowment, which means these games are going to support Clark Park in perpetuity. And when you support Clark Park, you're supporting kids getting summer lunches, athletic programs year-round, homework assistance, computer lab. And it's just a great place for a kid to spend time where they're going to be safe, where they're going to have positive adult role models, and where they can grow up the way a kid should grow up. So Clark Park, great place. You can find out more about them online. Just look for the Clark Park Coalition. If you want to make a donation, we sure would appreciate it. That's patronicity.com. Search for Clark Park, and you'll see it, Clark Park Classic 2022.
Oh man, the geeks have inherited the earth.
Did I do that?
What a dork.
Does him wanting to play with us again mean that he's turning into a geek, or we're turning into cool guys?
I have another entry this week, but
oh no! A walk-on. Let's have it.
Well, only because it just happened. But the Malik McDowell, remember Malik McDowell, the former Spartan?
I believe he was number 4 or number 2. I can't remember.
Yeah, single digit. Caused quite a stir before he even got into Michigan State with his mom and signing
dad and
the letter.
Is he committed? Is he not committed?
And then he gets drafted, and then has the ATV and maybe a head injury. But he's been arrested yet again. Right as he was trying to get back. I mean, he was playing with the Browns. He was playing okay. He wasn't a starter, but he was a contributor. And now he's been arrested again, this time for public indecency and assaulting a deputy. So I don't know how many strikes a guy can have, but this has got to be the final nail, at least for his NFL career.
Well, he's innocent until proven guilty, but certainly football teams, you don't have to be convicted of anything to get cut. And the NFL gets so much bad publicity for players behaving badly. I thought he was done after the Seahawks said, okay, we wasted a second-round pick on this guy.
Yeah, but you know what? He's 25, and he still has a lot of talent.
Oh, yeah. No, this is one of those guys who it feels like the ceiling is wherever he wants to set it. It's not like his ability caps out at some point.
I have another Geek of the Week.
Damn. Okay, keep it going.
Former Michigan President Mark Schlissel.
Oh, the Schliss.
What a clown. I'm so glad he's gone. Not a good university president.
So does John Vaughn go home now?
No one's
I just saw in the news 100 days he's been camped out in front of the president's.
And all he wants is an ear. He just wants someone to listen to him. And the regents won't do it, and Schlissel definitely wasn't going to do it. I don't know if Mary Sue Coleman, the old president, who's now the interim president, if she'll do it. My guess would be no, just because,
but
got to keep those payments down. Of course.
But she should. It's an easy one.
ML, it is the easiest thing to do, and yet they've all refused. But he's definitely a geek for, I don't know if you read any of the emails and how he hit on this subordinate at work, which violated the rules he created after Martin Filbert, a provost there, got in a little bit of sexual trouble. So good riddance.
Yeah, no, Schlissel tried to dance around the Dr. Anderson thing, was accused of maybe knowing about the provost's sexual harassment and not really doing anything about it.
They work in the same building.
Right.
And he should know.
And he was already on thin ice with the, is it the Regents, Board of Regents there?
Yeah, and that's really also what it boils down to is money, because the Regents were not happy with how he would, treat donors, because that's an important job of a president. But the whole Michigan, the business school downtown, he kind of kept that secret from the Regents, who are his boss. And I don't know. Do you know how many sexual impropriety cases that he's had since his time as president, since 2014 on?
I have no idea.
7 that he's presided over, and he's handled them all poorly. So
wow. Well, I'll tell you, as someone who's seen a few text messages in his day, the emails and the messages between him and the subordinate, they all seem pretty PG to me.
Yeah.
But when you have a zero tolerance policy, zero means zero, and yeah, he just didn't seem to engage.
The Regents did want him out, and he gave them all the ammunition they needed.
Well, now that he's a tenured professor, doesn't he is like a $2 million to create a lab and do? I mean,
that's all gone. I believe that was kind of his parting package. This 2-year transition where he got his full presidential salary of like $960,000. I believe that is all gone. He is still a tenured professor though, but I gotta imagine that the tenure review board will strip that away from him.
Well, I thought I saw something in the news of the Free Press talking about a morals clause in his contract that may void some of those things. But if he sticks around on campus,
not a good idea.
Yeah, he's got a pretty good deal there.
So beat those two geeks.
Wow. Well, before I get to that geek, this would be an ungeek, I guess. It wasn't too long ago that a judge ruled that the prosecution of Lou Anna Simon, the Michigan State president who resigned under a cloud, that the AG's case against her for covering up Dr. Nasser's crimes was a joke, that it was politically motivated and had no merit whatsoever. I don't know where that case is going to go, but it's been tough few years for the presidents of Michigan's two most esteemed public universities. And of course, there's been lots of feuding between the Board of Governors and the president of Wayne State in the past few years. But, hey, it's tough to have one of those jobs. They get paid a lot.
That's why you get paid a lot.
I think they know what they're in for when they take them. So okay, two good geeks. Well, I've got a couple of good geeks myself. They are Los Angeles police officers who were responding to an armed robbery in progress call when they got a more important call. Snorlax was near. Yes, they were captured on video in their car on their way to respond to an armed robbery in progress at a Macy's in L.A. when somebody realized that this was a Pokemon Go prime opportunity.
Boy.
Officer Eric Mitchell, and this is according to a report in The Guardian, Officer Eric Mitchell alerted Officer Louis Lozano that Snorlax just popped up at 46th and Limert. The Guardian says when their car stopped again, the digital in-camera system recorded Mitchell saying, don't run away, while Lozano described how he buried it and ultra-bailed, or ultra-balled? Let me double-check that.
How old are these?
I'm not as up on Pokemon Go as you would think. Buried and ultra-balled a Pokemon character before announcing, got him.
Oh, boy.
When officers got their Pokemon, LAPD decided to go get them, and they are both now no longer LA police officers, but they are our Geek of the Week.
There's an all-night party in room 7609. And you can dance together all night if you've got the time.
And now we come to Shawn's favorite part of the show, Room 7609, where we try and introduce you to some new wave bands you never heard about, or we play some great songs by new wave bands that you somehow missed. And one of my favorite parts of this feature is when we hear from listeners who have suggestions. Last week, Todd wanted The Jam, arguing that they qualify as a new wave band. He says that he has a broader definition of new wave than I do. That's hard to imagine because I'll throw just about anything from the late 70s, the 80s, and maybe even the early 90s into the new wave category. But Todd said we should try Boy About Town by the Jam. So let's check out Paul Weller and Friends and then talk a little bit about whether this qualifies as new wave gold.
Walking around on the Boy About Town that you heard of. See me walking the streets on top of the world.